Howdy, howdy, howdy. Yeah, find OBS. There we go. And admit everybody. Happy Friday. So, fan connect. Hey, Irfan. Congrats on getting your V2 thing done.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. I know you were saying you're really liking the V2 syntax, right?
Yeah, it's very awesome syntax, and I'm liking it a bit.
Cool.
How's everybody doing? Hi.
Hi, Isaias. How are you?
Hello.
Good.
People are laughing. How dare you have a good time?
Yeah, we won't have any of that here. Sorry.
Yeah. Is this the free call, right? Now the
Yep.
free support. Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna listen in the background. I don't have anything major. I'll pop up when I need to.
Sure.
Who's got something to work on? I know, Isaias, we talked about something. There was something we were talking about we could share during today, right?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
yeah. Was it what we were working on yesterday about the
Yeah.
monitoring your clicks,
Yeah.
uses of hotkeys and hot strings?
The one thing that I would like to have a go is I can't seem to log on to Chat GPT at all.
Really?
Nothing. I've not been able to log on for a good 10 days.
Oh wow. That's
I'm
interesting.
doing some.
One guy. I talked to them. They said you're out. No, I actually read a post. I read a post on it. It says delete your cookies. And from people, I've seen that exact thing saying they can't get in, and someone just said delete your cookies or use a different browser, obviously too. And
Well, I went incognito, and I deleted. Yeah, so I'll give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have heard that was a problem, and that people said delete your cookies. And what else is normally with that? Cookies, and there's one other thing.
Cache. You delete your cache.
Yeah.
Or you can create the Rofadium new session.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Good one, Irfan.
Yeah.
So if I'm in Chrome in the settings, F5, Control F5 clears the cache. What clears the cookies?
You have to go to the top navigation bar on the left. There's kind of like a little padlock. Just click on that and see where it says cookies. And after you enter there, then you can delete them. The
Top navigation bar where it says padlock.
Yeah.
I don't have that. I've got the
let me share my screen real quick.
Please.
So if you can see my screen at the top navigation.
Hang on, wait. I've got to switch. Okay.
So at the top navigation bar here,
you
have this little padlock that allows you to see the cookies. And then you can just click remove until they're gone.
And that removes for that page or for anything?
For that page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll give that a go. Thank you.
Speaking of which, for some of you guys, I emailed out a extract from a podcast with these guys that were talking about Chat GPT and AI, and the whole thing was like an hour and a half long. So it's and it had good information, but it was, it went here and there and whatever. But the 6 minutes I extracted was very, very interesting of the usage and where it's going and licensing, and copywriting and how that's going to, do stuff.
What do you think the charging, to write a blog post, what's that going to cost me in the future?
Not much.
That should be very, very little. Right.
Are we talking about cents? Are we talking about dollars? Are we talking about tens of dollars?
Well,
cents. Okay.
I would just caveat that to say also it really has to do with how good of a prompt
Yeah,
because
that's for sure.
garbage out, right? And if you can, and we actually have a script. I don't know if you guys saw that. We created a script to set the stage for AutoHotkey and give it a bunch of instructions before we tell it to write an AutoHotkey script.
Yep. I saw that. I saw that you produced it. Is it available? It's for download? Is it a file? What is it?
Yeah, let me pull it up.
If you can pop it in the Telegraph group, that'll be awesome.
Yeah. While they do that, does anybody have any questions, anything that they're working on?
Zayas, do you remember what in the world we called that? Because I typed.
Well, if you search for Chat GPT on the pre-links, there must be something. No, it was not the summary.
Well, the problem.
Did we actually create? Did we create? I don't think we created that one.
I'm pretty sure we did.
I remember the summary one.
HK rules. Yeah, I see it now.
Rules. Okay,
Yeah,
there we go.
See, you named it, which is no, I'm not knocking it. It's just, but it's a point.
Like, you don't remember about it.
Is it's one of those things about hotkey. A lot of people forget the value is you get to adjust it to what makes sense to you, right? And it's amazing how. So Isaias, I forget we got sidetracked, but earlier I was like, God, I'm an idiot, and you're like, why? And then we got sidetracked because our tool, the tool that. What do we call it? Customer list or client list? Customer list, I think, right? For emailing our heroes and other people. That's another one you named. To me, and I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, like, to me, that's not how I think about it, right?
Right.
But I launch it from QAP.
So you don't care about the name.
Well, I idiotically used client list as the name in QAP, and that was where it just dawned on me, like, it doesn't matter what it is. I just changed what I want to call it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm like, why am I,
Yeah, why would I do that? That's for sure. Oh, God.
So I just put it there. I'll put it in the YouTube chat as well.
Please provide an AHK template to fill out the Zoom page.
Tyler was asking how often do we use it. I'm using it. Scott said almost daily now. I'm like, we're multiple times a day. Like, we had a couple videos we were gonna try to crank out today at some point, or this morning, whatever. Let's see. One was self-signing your certificate, your scripts for a local certification on your computer. And Isaias had gone to Stack Overflow because that's what he used before. And I'm like, did you ask Chat GPT?
Yeah.
And then we actually did, and it came up with the solution also just for fun. And then the other one was I was working because we were talking with Ryan Wells the other day, and he was sharing his screen, and we were telling him, pointing it in Explorer at different AutoHotkey files. And when you select it, it doesn't preview the text of the AutoHotkey file. And Isaias had showed me how to update that, where you can tell it, hey, it's a text file, preview the damn file, right? So I wrote Chat GPT and said, can you do this? And it gave me the registry commands, and I said, okay, now convert that to an AutoHotkey script. And it did that. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. On Isaias's computer, when he selects it, VS Code is previewing, not Explorer, but it's using a different interpret editor to preview. So I asked ChatGPT, can you make it where site for AutoHotkey can do the preview? And it wrote some more code. I haven't tested it yet, but
I would definitely just caveat that for that to work, that program must have registered itself as a handler. So it's not any program that can be displayed there. They have to be registered as a handler. Right. So VS Code did that, but I'm not really sure if any editor would be able to be as a preview because of that. But yeah, it is a very interesting concept in which whenever you're in Explorer and you select an AutoHotkey file, just click on it. If you have the preview pane available, it would not show anything because it is not configured that way. Let me share what I mean by that. And as I updated my computer, that is happening again. So I have to fix that. So when you click on an AutoHotkey file, you will notice that it says no preview available. But if you click on an XML file, I do get a preview. And right now the preview is not the VS Code one because I haven't set that up. I don't know if I had to do something. I just started noticing that VS Code was doing that. And I was like, oh, that's neat. But that's what I'm referring to. So this is possible if you tell that extension that its perceived type is text like this. And that is something, it's not difficult to do. It is a very minor change that you have to do.
But click on your XML file.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Right now it's not
Right.
using VS Code anymore because I reset my computer.
Okay, yeah.
I don't remember at any point telling VS Code to do that. Somehow that got added in one of the updates or whatever. But
my point is, it's easily doable, right?
yes,
Like it's
yes, it is. It is a
just
very
from
simple
hotkey code. Not it's you can do it for a lot of different things. For HTML, I'm sure we could do it for, right? And have it,
for
why
any
not?
extension. Actually, for any extension, you can set up what the perceived type is, and those perceived types have a handler, and that's what I mentioned before, like a handler, and the handler displays it here on the preview pane. By default, the handler for text files is notepad, but that can be changed as well. I don't know how VS Code changed that, but
yeah. But and back to the original point, it's just amazing that we could just ask Chat GPT.
Yeah, you just told it, hey, just do it.
And not only that, but it also, because usually after, and if not, you can write this as part of the instructions, you could tell it to annotate it. You can tell it to say, explain how to install and run this. So I was just telling Isaias, we don't even have to distribute our scripts in reality. We could have Chat GPT write it and then use the share button, the extension that Ray had showed us, to just say, hey, here it is. And not only is it the script, but here's your step-by-step instructions, which for some people that are not familiar with AutoHotkey, like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to handhold people that aren't used to it.
Right.
It's crazy. It's so powerful.
So this is the thing, like the problem that we're facing right now with most of what we do is that there's so many things that we're doing so quickly that is so complicated to keep track of how many scripts we have created, how many things we have done. But if I just do it in Chat GPT and share that, I don't have to keep track of that. I just give you the link. Here it is. Just go ahead and do it. So it is a good example of how that is becoming more and more a tool for the everyday use. It's not just like, oh, somebody was saying, hey, why don't we replace Alexa or, oh, there she goes. Cancel that. or the Google, how is it called?
Google Home.
The assistant, right? Like, yeah, why don't we have ChatGPT do that?
And it will, right? And that was in that extract where I talked about with that 6-minute thing. It was pretty cool because the guy actually had a iOS app and it was on his phone, and he asked it, hey, where can I go to get this kind of dish? And it provided, said, well, which one's the best? And it provided that. And then the other guy's like, hey, at some point they're going to say, hey, it looks like it'll be tied to your GPS, right? And say, it looks like you went there. Did you have this dish? Was it really good? Rate it. And tying it all together is just, it's going to be so much easier to learn and get more information. And it's just wild, right? Like
I think they've not connected it to the internet yet in terms of it can't crawl the internet. When it can, I think the power of it will skyrocket.
Yeah, version 4 is to my understanding connected to the internet, right? And that should be out this summer, is my understanding. But also they were talking about in this video, and Ray, I was, just because you're a lawyer, right? They were talking about copywriting stuff and the data they're scraping, and apparently, like, Craigslist has in the robot, for those of you who aren't really geeky, there's a file on a lot of web pages. Is it called robots.txt? Is ASTXT? Mm-hmm. Telling it, hey, can Google or any kind of bot scrape this site? Well, Craigslist has never apparently let anybody scrape their site.
Yeah, exactly.
So So they have, and of course, some people still do, not that I would ever do that, but tools like Chat GPT and Google stuff can't scrape it. But like Yelp, they were talking about, like, Yelp has an API and you're doing this stuff. If that example I gave you where I'm on my phone and I'm using Yelp data to provide scores, but I don't go to Yelp because it's all here and I make a decision, but Yelp never got the advertisement because they do ads and stuff. Like, hey,
that's going to be an issue.
From the lawyer's perspective, they're like, this is a clear demonstration that they have been harmed because they didn't earn the money. And so they need to, even if they cite it, that may not be enough, right? Like, it's a interesting area. But there's a crap load of stuff out there that people don't, put restrictions on. But they mentioned they're gonna, like, the biggies are going to be like Amazon store, the iPhone something ratings. I forget what they said, but there's some sort of ratings on stuff in iPhones and Google Maps and things, right? Like that's a crazy amount of data that'll be available that can really make a huge difference in how we do stuff.
That's correct.
I was just in a hearing where the psychiatrist referred to untreated psychosis decreasing brain volume. I put in a question into Chat GPT and I got a series of questions that I could ask him about it, undermining that
that particular argument. Yeah.
I was able to say, well, those studies are as a result of a small group. There weren't any control groups. No. To the point where he said, well, you may have better knowledge of this area than I do.
And you were like, yeah.
Wow.
Well, guys, I think we've got a new verb coming out. Rather than saying Google it, you could say Chat GPT it.
Chat GPT.
I told Isaiah, so I'm going to call it's Chat GPT.
Chat GPT. Yeah, Chat GPT.
So again, does anyone have any? I mean, I'm happy to keep talking to this because this is what I mentioned at the end of one of our videos of the day. What I realized is it is just a leverage tool, right? Like this tool allows us to get so much more done. It's insane, right? And this is why all of us with AutoHotkey are so excited because that's why we came to AutoHotkey, right? We wanted to be more efficient. This is just another great add-on that is going to allow us to be even more productive. Sometimes we're using it to write AutoHotkey code, right? It just depends on the usage, but sometimes it's in a whole different. I use it a lot more for other things than for writing AutoHotkey code, right? Yeah. Of course, it's also because I have Isaiah and we're experts. Most people, I don't think, are going to use Chat GPT in their area that they're an expert.
Right.
It's maybe version 4 that might change. Yeah. But right now, if you're an expert in the area, you're better than it. But if
well, yes and no, because sometimes you need to rephrase things. So, for example, my English is not eloquent, and when it comes to writing copy in a particular tone of voice,
but that's my point, Guy. You're using it as a copywriting or as a writing assistant, not as a photographer, right?
Correct.
So that's my point.
And actually,
I get your point though. You're using it for your business, right? But it's not what you're an expert in.
I was just gonna argue in favor of what he just said, because, for example, for me, when I go ahead and try to tell GPT to write some code for me, as soon as the code comes in, I've noticed that there's a lot of issues. I have to reprompt. I have to tell it to change this, tell it to change that, and I said, like, I'm taking more time refactoring what you just gave me than if I had just written it myself and then just told you, tell me the problems that this code could have. So I would write the code first, pass it to GPT to see potential issues that I didn't see about, but I wouldn't use it to write the code for me yet. And that's what they were just mentioning.
I'm thinking of using Chat GPT to clean up my code. Saying, here's my code, it functions well.
Right.
Can you make it more
optimize it?
Easy? Can you optimize it? But what does optimize mean?
Right. Optimize it. I had very bad results with that yet.
Optimize it to make it more readable for myself as a programmer. Optimize it in terms of remove extraneous code that actually is now a legacy code that is not actually being activated anymore because you know those functions don't get used, or they're being commented out, or that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. But in general,
to that one alone, guy, because what were we doing? It was, I think, the inline commands. We were doing something with in-string, I think, or not in-string, but there's some that are deprecated. And you, if I remember right, it was you was talking about, oh, I should redo this because they're deprecated. Like, well, they're deprecated, but they've been deprecated for years. And
yeah,
and they still work. So if it works,
however,
why bother? Yeah.
Well, because it gets back to, hey, if we're not doing the work, right?
Yeah,
if we get Chat GPT to do the work instead of us, then suddenly it maybe it is, hey, just tell me this command in AutoHotkey is deprecated, update it with the version that wouldn't be deprecated, and it would probably do it for you. What I was going to say was mention to everyone what you spent a lot of yesterday doing.
Yesterday, regarding, well, I was working. Are you talking about the one that had to do with the
our API stuff?
For the API stuff.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So for that one, we are trying to train Chat GPT, as we mentioned before, and try to focus it on AutoHotkey. So there's a section on actually sending files to Chat GPT. Now, there is one little detail about that. When you're sending files to a server, you have to send a specific type of request that is called a multi-part form data is what it's called. And we had done a video about that a long time ago, a few years ago. And now I found myself having to deal with that again, because in V2, there is no function for that. Now, I gave ChatGPT, hey, can you create a function that does that? And it gave me one, but the server was not understanding the request because the data was not converted to the proper, how it should have been. I spent a lot of time trying to get ChatGPT. In the end, what I had to do was just grab a version that was working in V1 and tell ChatGPT, help me translate this. I just told it, remove this, do that, and it actually went ahead and did some fixes on that.
We should go back and look at your thread on that, because it might be a good template to create, have a nice intro for converting V1 to V2 stuff, right? Of telling ChatGPT that process.
Hold on.
Which was one of the other ones we want to talk about, was if people are willing to give it a try, we have that tool to summarize, the summary of what you've done in ChatGPT and share, because we didn't get anybody to share what they had used it for.
Hold on, give me a second. Yeah.
Well, I've not been able to get on it for the last 10 days.
Right now, I'm having issues logging in as well. Yeah,
I was on it earlier.
Yeah, and I was as well. I was using the self-signing certificate.
So Isaias, do you have it bookmarked? And if not, I can give it to you. That other page, remember? So in a different video I was watching, this guy, he did a good, decent job of introing it. He does Dolly stuff, like images, but he did one on ChatGPT. And he mentioned when you sign up to get the API and that, they give you kind of a sandbox with the browser. It's not the normal prompt thing, but it's still a browser, but you can change like the ratings of temperature and creativeness and other stuff, right? He said on that page, even when the site's down, you can use that page because you have your token and it quote unquote costs you money, but it's tiny. But when we tried that once before, it didn't work. So if you're having problems right now, maybe we can.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to pay for ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to use it.
Yeah.
Which is the thing, is like, that's what is, to me, it's like, it's so powerful in value, it's so helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, my biggest thing, as you say, is with the English language. And it blew me away when I went to a friend of mine's website. He's not a competitor because we're not local. So, as photographers, if it's more than an hour and a half's drive away or 2 hours drive away, you don't compete, because clients don't tend to travel that far, especially with babies and kids.
Absolutely.
And I loved his website. So I basically told ChatGPT, I copied the text of his page, his verbiage, put into Chat GPT, and I said, rephrase it so it's not plagiarized, but has the same emotional impact. It did a beautiful job.
Nice.
Yeah. So let me share my screen.
You know, the thing I would add to that, guy, is to tell it to, you know, for some of the things to make it more interesting, to make it more, not clickbaity, but, you know, would it get more attention, because it does a phenomenal job at rewriting stuff to make it where people, I could say, I'm like, wow, people, that sounds so much more interesting than what I wrote.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So even if you write stuff and say, use this as a seed and expand.
Well, my point is, which is also when you said how much is going to cost me to do a blog post. Well, you can have it do the whole thing. However, we all know there are certain things like the, you know, headlines and subheads. There's your footer, your like, you should have something at the bottom. There's pictures, right? Things that are more important than the whole body, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I would say is, no matter what you're doing, you go back and spend more time on those things.
Yes.
Just because it's a bigger bang for the buck, right?
Right.
Zayas, was it working?
I was, you know, well, this is the point. I was just going to share that you can go to beta.openai.com/playground.
Yes.
And here you have access to some presets, probably the chat and so on.
I believe those presets are different engines. So Chat GPT is the most expensive engine, and the rest are cheaper.
100% sure in this case, if that's correct, because what it's doing when I load a preset is that it creates a prompt. You see that?
Yeah, the models are what you're thinking of, Guy.
So Guy is thinking about the models and so on, but I think all of them are either the same model, but just with different prompts. Because, for example, when I click text to command, it just adds a prompt with some examples.
Yeah, it's a
so I'm not really sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if it is basically as you mentioned, but the point that we were trying to make is that we could change some parameters here. They explain what those parameters are, and basically you can modify a little bit how it works. So in general, I think you can, here's the model. Here's the one that you can change. So all of these presets are for that one model, which is Chat GPT, but you can change it to Codex or something else. Now, this here, I don't remember. This is not exactly the one that I was using, because the one that you mentioned, Joe, you could pass it your own token.
Right.
This doesn't look like the token that I was looking at.
You're logged in. So it might already be using that.
Just put in a query there where it says write a tagline, put in your own query.
Yeah, sure. So this is like create a list of variables containing 5 to 10 parameters. Yeah, for example. So oh yeah, exactly. It's telling me few things. So this one seems to be tied to my account. That's for the playground, but and that's what I meant before. It seems to be that I have some limits or something. I have been having issues.
What I did was I went into my account and I gave it my credit card, and
it actually now okay.
Yeah.
So right.
Well, Ray, just tell us your credit card and we'll try
it. So guys, just to report, I've cleared my cookies and I've managed to log in.
Oh, good.
However, perfect.
However, please
give us the link for that playground thing that you had up there, Isaiah.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Link is, yeah, so that one is beta.open. I'm going to put it in the chat.
So Isaiah, also look at the view code. I just did mine and it doesn't show you. It didn't on mine show my token, so I don't think that's a big deal. But I think it's a good one to share your screen and demonstrate
so
how you can see the API calls that are getting done.
Right. So
behind the scenes.
Screen. Right. So once you click on view code here, it gives you the type of code that you would need to run that command through their OpenAI. And this is the query, the endpoint that you're going to be querying, you're going to have some headers there. And when you see a /D or -D, that is just, you're going to put this as a string in the send. So I could just convert that real quick so you can see what I mean. So if I have HTTP,
this is one of our gripes, is that any API you go to, they never have an AutoHotkey example, right? They have Perl,
of course,
Ruby,
right.
they have, you know, so
well, I think it's a good idea to be able to generate a converter, and I was going to use Chat GPT to convert curl code into AutoHotkey.
Sure.
Right, but basically it is as simple as just saying open. This is going to be according to this GET request. So that's going to be a GET request to that endpoint. And then you say HTTP set request header, and you have the header here, content type.
Yes, but the syntax that you're using, you have knowledge of this. I would never in a million years be able to get this.
But that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm giving you an example, so that
Okay.
you could go ahead and understand more or less what how to convert this really quickly.
Yeah.
So this is going to be here, and your bearer OpenAPI key, what it would be is here. That would be a variable. So you have a space, a variable. After you do that, this is what you're going to send. So let's say data. Yeah, that's the payload. That could be a variable like this. Let me just close it here. Yeah, this is V1. And then that's it. HTTP dot send and send the data. Right, that's it.
So basically wait for the response. And
right. So now what is going to happen is that later on, you're going to get in the HTTP response text, what you're going to get is a string, a JSON string. That's what you're going to get in this variable when it finishes. Now, here's the thing. If you have a JSON parser, then it can be converted into an object, and you can work with it as an object. But
yeah, I've done that. It's useful.
Right. But this is not hard. It's just about opening the request to the correct endpoint, setting the correct headers, and sending the correct data.
It's not hard. It's just finicky with the syntax.
Well, no, that's what I was going to say. The most difficult part, and actually this is not a GET, this is a POST request because I have to send data.
Right.
But here's the thing. The problem usually comes when you're sending data. If the data is just a JSON string, no problem. That is easy. It's just what I showed. If you're sending files, that becomes a hairy mess. That's not that easy. Yeah, that's
but also, just to be fair, like on different API calls require different stuff. And even just that little switch that you just did, a GET to a POST. Like if you don't even understand also that case matters, it needs to be uppercase, otherwise it breaks. There's a lot of little settings, and this is where I'd say Chat GPT could be phenomenal at helping people, elevating them to close to where we are as far as the understanding the API calls, right? Like, because you don't have to know it, you just have it do the rough stuff.
I would just tell it, hey, create a COM object create request with an AutoHotkey that does that. That's it.
I did the other day, and it didn't quite work, and I just gave up. But I asked ChatGPT to create a script, an AutoHotkey script that will convert a curl request to an AutoHotkey script, right? Yeah. Because
awesome.
Then I want that script. Go back to it all the time, right? Yeah, exactly.
No, it's not a script. It's just ask ChatGPT to do it for you.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the thing is that I think ChatGPT has enormous potential where you know what you don't know. It can fix that for you. But if you don't know, so for instance, I know I've got to convert it from A to B. I don't know how to do that though. Chat GPT will do that. Right. But if I don't know, I want to convert
that's basically, that's basically what I'm referring to. I'm gonna, by the way, just share the code that I just wrote into the Hero group and in the chat. so that you guys can have that as an example. This is kind of like a
I know I don't need it right now, but I know I'm going to need it soon.
Yeah, but that's kind of like a template. Remember that is HKV1 code.
So let's finish up what we're talking about with that is because we have an account, right? And we can use that browser interface, or we can do API calls and upload files, do give it prompts, this and that, and we're creating environment. Again, that you have to have an account. It's going to cost you a little bit of money, but it's nothing right at the moment.
No,
right,
it's very, very cheap. So
and it's quite confusing also as far as when Isaias was talking through, when we're looking at the thread and like, is it actually learning? Is it the model? And it was, so once we get a handle on it, we'll figure out a way to either share the whole thing, or we'll create a system where we can have people log into our tool and use. Right now we're creating one for AutoHotkey, right, in V1. But at some point, we'll figure it out, right, one way or another to make it available.
Well, when you figure it out, I'll be using it because I don't need to figure that out. That's what you do.
So actually, that was in that podcast I mentioned. It was interesting. One of the things they talked about was who's going to make money off of Chat GPT, this and how. And they said, look, because Google and other places are probably going to open source their version, OpenAI might have to also open source theirs to some degree or whatever, right? And it was interesting because they said it's going to kind of be like a grocery store where they provide the ingredients, but it's people like us that go and pick out the items, cook our thing, and then sell it. Then that's where we have to, of course, pay for our ingredients, so they'll make money there. But how we combine them and how we create stuff, and that's what you see a lot of businesses right now online. That's what they're doing, right? Is they're integrated, they're creating a tool that in a certain way uses what they have, because, which I totally agree with, they're like, the average person doesn't have time to create a neural network and do all this stuff. And I'm like, it's very complicated. But the using of it, that's not not hard at all.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I did want to ask if anybody has questions, because we have been talking about this because nobody has asked any questions. So if anybody has an AutoHotkey related question, please go ahead. If you have been patiently waiting, let's go ahead and do it, because we're almost at the end of the hour.
Yeah.
We try to help some people out, but if you don't ask, okay, go right.
Anthony mentioned, and I don't mind we pick a different thing. He's like, hey, can you write a script that would automate, the
billing of the
and I'm like, I get enough junk emails, people putting stuff in there already. I'm not doing that. But we can pick another form, right? Like,
but I think the reason why he's getting that, and I was asking you about it, is because the URL does not contain the password or something. In the newsletter, the URL that you send is sending them to the form directly. But there is another link that you have given me other times for other meetings that it goes straight into the meeting. So that might be,
that one brings you, if you're not registered, then you get the form.
No, I always get the form.
I can tell. I always got the form before.
But you're not logged in then on the tool. That's what you're not.
You're not logged into Zoom is what you mean,
right?
On the web page of Zoom.
It has to know who you are in order to recognize you.
So that might be one thing. So Ray had a question, and then I see Brian raising his hand as well. Go ahead, Ray.
Do you remember the problem that I had with Display Fusion?
Yes.
Yeah. My memory is that you said that there was a way around it, and I think you also said that it was easy. Could you give me a clue?
Did I? The word easy is not coming out of my mouth that easily recently, because every time I say something is easy, it tends to be really complicated. But what I was thinking is for you to hijack the Alt tab in AutoHotkey, process it yourself first, and then send an Alt tab through AutoHotkey to see if that fixes the issue. So you would have to register the Alt tab key, and that is not that simple. Actually, in the same documentation, when you're creating hotkeys, it tells you that Alt tab is a special hotkey that the system has that is not that easy to hijack, but they give you workarounds on how you can use that. So you might want to, I don't think it is an easy solution. I probably said that it is a workaround, but it is, I cannot guarantee that it's going to be simple because we're dealing with a very special hotkey.
Okay, that's fine. Then it's not important enough right now for me to go
to go that deep. Right,
yeah,
I understand.
I'll just leave. I had a memory you said easy, and
no, if I did, I'm sorry, but recently I'm trying to not say that it's an easy fix, because every time I start with something like that, I find out that there's a lot of little details that make it very complex, and I'm like, okay, great.
And just jumping back to Chat GPT for a moment, I asked it what effect Congress failing to raise the debt limit would have on my investments, and it said it'll be really bad. And then I asked it to prepare a letter to my broker saying, what can I do?
That's Now, I saw Brian also having a question. Let's see if you.
Yeah, I have a question. Maybe you, Isaiah, can help me out on this one. Is there a easy or a way to make sure that when you're dealing with a text element GUI, that you can keep it centered?
Centered on your GUI. That's not an easy.
It's called
question.
Math.
Yeah, that's math. That's for sure, because what happens is AutoHotkey, whenever you create controls, it sizes your GUI automatically, and that's where the problem is going to be. So there's two ways. You can set all the controls first, get the current size of the GUI, and then do some math and move the controls into that location to center them. Or
no. Let me make it more clear. What I'm talking about is I have the actual text element where I want it. It's the actual content within the text GUI, if that makes sense.
Can you share your screen? Let me see. Because I think I'm getting what you, but because
unfortunately I don't.
Okay.
I don't have an working example right now. I don't think.
All right. Okay.
I can see.
I cannot really tell you a good answer because I'm not really understanding the question about what you're what you mean by
okay.
Right.
I got a possible example. It may not be the best example right now. Give me 1 second.
Yep.
If you see how these are all white aligned to one side, is there a way to align it to the middle?
Like center them in a text control? Yes. No. So the point is two things. Well, first of all, you will need to set a font that is the same width. For example,
monospace.
The monospace fonts like Courier New, Consolas, those will help you a little bit more into this direction. But the problem is centering text. If it is just text, you will need a lot of spaces. So you need to calculate the spacing. Now, that might sound easy, but it's not. So the problem is and you can try it. Try to center text in Notepad, for example, and you will notice that it's not that simple. So what you're requesting, the only way for you to do it would be get the longest string, calculate how many spaces that is, and then go line by line. And if the text is not that amount of spaces, then move the text and pad it with spaces until it gets there. But that's a function that is not going to be that simple.
Well, I think there's actually some examples in the forum that will do that. Right?
All right.
But what I would also suggest or recommend is this is when people go, oh, why don't I just use like Geek Dude's Neutron or Maestria's pretty GUI stuff, where they use HTML that has a lot of the stuff built into it, and it just HTML, makes it so much easier. Or
you can ask Chat GPT to do that for you. You can try. You just pass a text and say, hey, make that it looks centered.
We don't own stock in Chat GPT, by the way.
Well, the thought is write AutoHotkey function to
do that. Oh, well, that's a very interesting one. I'm going to try that after this call. Let me see what happens. Let me see
you've got to manipulate a string, so yeah.
So that it goes ahead and centers the stuff. But again, first of all, I would ask, and this is the part, I would ask it about the algorithm. I would say, hold on, give me an algorithm that would take text, calculate its width, and then pad the text to make it look centered. Once it gives you the steps, then say, make a function that follows those rules. And you might get a better answer than just saying, hey, create a function that does that, because we would not know the context correctly. But that's, again, that's the reason why we talk about these things. Yeah, I cannot sit down and create that for you, Brian, but because I understand that it's going to be a little bit more complex than it looks, but I could rely on Chat GPT to do that for me and then create a function that would do it forever. So why not? Why not do that instead? But yeah.
Who knows, Chat GPT would join us in this meeting one day.
Well, at the end of the day, it's a tool, and as far as I look, it doesn't. And if we can be more productive because we're using that tool, awesome. It means we can get a lot more done and concentrate on what I call the value added, as opposed to the just the technical, the technician stuff. We can be the artist as opposed to just the technician that mixes the paints for the artist. Because at the moment, we've got to mix the paints and do the drawing.
Yeah. A lot of work. But that's something that that we're going to be seeing a little bit more of. Right now for AutoHotkey itself, I do not see much use in the sense of it has old data, but as soon as ChatGPT is online, I could probably ask it about version 2 of AutoHotkey, and it would definitely do what we're asking for. Especially, that somebody, I think on the chat said, hey, I wish, I think in the YouTube chat said, I wish to see that prompt for converting V1 to V2, right? And that is not doable at the moment. I can prompt it by telling it what to do. Wherever you find a byref, just use the ampersand instead. Wherever you see the equal sign, convert it to colon equals. And I can give it some rules to follow on a specific text, but I have to give those instructions every single time. But at some point, if it's connected, I would tell it, check the V1 documentation, check the V2 documentation. Now, here is this code, convert it to V2. It should do that really fast.
Well, again, because programming it's basically math. You know what I mean? It's a clear science. It's not arbitrary in how things are done usually. So it's where it'll be hugely reliable once it has some data and it's been trained. And again, we keep saying Chat GPT. It's really AI is what we're talking about, right? Like,
It's just.
I think what will happen is different people will train it different ways, and then rent out their training in order for you to be able to use it, if that makes sense, rather than using the publicly available Chat GPT. So, well, here's my version of Chat GPT with my training.
Right. Let me answer something that somebody was mentioning on the YouTube chat. He's saying, I got into programming last year. I'm crazy about my environment automation. Why AHK instead of C? So C is a programming language that is designed to be memory efficient. And let me go ahead and do something. Brian, can you stop sharing your screen, please? Yeah, there you go. So See, no worries. So C and C++ are languages that are designed for very specific tasks, is being efficient with memory and, being as fast as possible with direct memory management. C++, not that much because it adds a few things. But AutoHotkey is not that efficient with memory because it's a scripting language. I explained a few days ago or a few weeks ago why that is. I'm not going to details because on that right now, but AutoHotkey is designed for something that C++ isn't, or C, and it is clear syntax to do automation things, right? Specifically for automation. It's in the name, AutoHotkey. The same happens with the language like AutoIt, which is where AutoHotkey comes from. Those are languages that are specifically designed to make automation easier. Taking that into account, when you go ahead and you can, I think, Joe, you mentioned Rosetta Code a few days ago. Rosetta Code is a place where you can see the same example in different languages. Try that. Try and look for, create a message box with AutoHotkey versus C++, and you will see the difference. And very simple tasks like create a file in C or C++ takes much more code than the one-liner that you can do in AutoHotkey. And this is something that you will notice over and over again. Why? Well, because those programs do not have, those languages do not have automatic memory management. You have to manage the memory yourself. Whenever you create a variable, you have to set the size of the variable, make sure that the variable is correct, and then in the end, release that memory. A lot of different type of things that AutoHotkey, you don't have to deal with that. You put a number in a variable and that's it, and then you change it to a string and that's it, and it does everything for you, you know? So that's why, if you care about environment and stuff like that, like the environment for automation specifically, I would go with the language with AutoHotkey. Now, notice that Joe was sharing his screen about seeing two examples. Notice that in AutoHotkey is one line. In C++, you have to include a library because you couldn't do that without that library. That's the first thing. Second of all, you have to understand that you cannot execute any code if you do not have a main function like this. In AutoHotkey, you don't have to worry about those kind of things.
But what I would add to that is it really has a lot more to do. Well, there's many aspects you got to take into account. One is your knowledge base, right? Or the person creating the code. Do you want to spend a lot of time trying to learn if you're not a programmer? Like AutoHotkey is amazing. Another huge one is, are you anticipating something that is running just on your system or a lot of systems, right? If it's your system, again, AutoHotkey is amazing. And actually, even on other Windows systems, unless you're doing web scraping or something, it's usually pretty good, depending on if you're doing image search or not or whatever, right? But when you're doing something that you expect to be run millions of times, and I forget who we were talking to the other day, or actually a guy you mentioned earlier, when we talk about efficiency, is it efficiency in execution? Is it efficiency in creating the code? Those are very, very different things. For the most part, people who are working with AutoHotkey, we care about how long it takes me to come up with a solution, not how long it's going to take it when it runs, because we're not doing things millions of times.
But the other thing is efficiency in debugging a code also depends on how well the code is annotated, how this is structured, whether it's a bunch of go-to statements that are randomly placed.
That has GPT more to do with your knowledge. That was the point, right?
Correct.
We're talking about which one you pick, AutoHotkey or C, and why you differentiate between the two.
But to answer to something else that he said is, I thought that's why they wrote Java, but it seems that it's not so popular in the way cooler languages like Go or Rust. Again, mainly that is true, and mainly is because Java or C#, those are languages that are really verbose. To do a few things, you have to write a lot of code. When you use Go or Rust, they're very, very direct. You give it a command and it does it. And AutoHotkey looks more like Go or Rust than to C#.
Well, and I always say AutoHotkey is the Swiss Army knife for Windows, right? If you're using a Windows computer and you're trying to automate either things on a Windows computer or other Windows programs, it's an amazing tool, right? It's phenomenal. Especially because it can let almost anybody, beginning level, whatever, do stuff. If you're doing more advanced things or you need it in cross-platform, whatever, then it's not your tool, right? Like Python's a great tool for being pretty straightforward and yet cross-platform. And but I wouldn't use it for creating a hotkey and going to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I'm actually
creating a hotkey is not that simple.
Which is the other thing is like desktop automation versus server-side automation. A lot of people confuse that as well. And most stuff with Python, you're doing stuff on servers, and you can do stuff locally with Python. Don't get me wrong, but that's where AutoHotkey really shines. Is that desktop automation? I'm automating my computer to do certain things. It's phenomenal.
Right. That's true.
Anyone else got any other questions or anything?
Hey, I got another one. You were going to send me a while back to find that you had a script that shows if an application is accessing your microphone.
Oh, an application.
Well, no.
But yeah, so you can tell that with Windows by itself. There is a section in Windows. Let me share my screen real quick. That if I remember correctly, if you go to your settings and there is something that has to do with devices.
I'll paste the path into the
right. So there is something that tells you what are the applications that are using your microphone right now, and that is basically let me see. So microphone.
Is there a way to feed that into into a script?
Well, you just it's in the registry, so you can read the registry.
Here's the thing: there is a section on the settings that tell you who has access to the microphone, and also what is there are some apps that have access to the microphone, and look at that, it says Zoom meetings is currently in use. So it can list what is actually using your microphone at the moment as well. Now, all of this, again, as Joe just mentioned, that can be found on the registry as well. So if you want an AutoHotkey script that does that, it is doable in practice. It's just, you would have to know where to look for that, right? You have to know where to look for that information.
Which I put a path that can get you started at least.
Right.
Like I said, it's complicated. Because even that path gets you to where here are things that are connected to the microphone, but they may or may not be on, and so you'd have to
right. You have to enter in each of them, and there's one that it tells you whether it's on or not. So yeah, it is a learning journey. So if you have time, you can just go ahead and check it out and read a little bit more about it. But yeah.
And if you look around, there's one for the webcam also, which might be of interest to you. And Brian, by the way, I don't know if you saw my message, but thanks you definitely improved your microphone situation. We can hear you much, much clearer. So
definitely.
I actually have a real microphone coming right now. I'm using the cell.
Oh yeah, he muted himself. You're using your what?
I'm using a cell phone. It's a complicated system. I'm using a dual cam over to OBS, using NDI to go from there. It's complicated. I have a real microphone coming today.
Yeah.
It's the thing in Facebook when you're like in a relationship and you change your status to it's complicated.
It's complicated. Yeah. It's like yeah, there you go. Okay. So I think we did have a very nice chat. GPT, of course, but we have been talking about Chat GPT very often. But again, as somebody pointed out, it's a really good tool. Some people, and I saw in the YouTube comments saying like, "Oh, it's hurting artists." Well, I would say it's hurting artists that do not understand how good of a thing this is.
Well, let's do a quick comparison back to the Industrial Revolution, right? Or let's just horses before cars. Yeah. And there were blacksmiths who were like, oh, I need to keep my job. This is whatever. And hey, some people said, wow, this is amazing. I need to switch to see how I can start working on cars and, look at where people got. I mean, you need to look at this and say, how do I incorporate this tool into my life instead of just putting your head in the sand and saying it sucks.
But actually, to what I mentioned to you as well was, now Chat GPT just made the value of an artist tenfold better, because now you can say my art was not created by an AI. For that reason, you have to pay more. Now, the only thing is that now you have to prove that. You have to prove this is actually, because I saw a case of somebody that is a real artist. He made his own drawings, but they said, it looks like Chat GPT. So it was Chat GPT and they banned him from Reddit or whatever. I don't know what it was. But now the point is, hey, that is adding value to you, because now you can say, because was not created by an AI, it has more value. People don't look at it that way. I hope they do. If they don't, they have to switch to AI. And if they don't switch, then yeah, bye-bye, because the future is actually AI, whether you like it or not. So it's just the ones that actually switch that are gonna be better off.
So lastly, just real quickly, someone was saying in the chat here that they read once that AutoHotkey is just an unnecessary layer of like PowerShell scripting or something.
No way.
That's what, yeah.
Oh, God, no.
It's wrapping Windows, architecture, right? The API. So sure, if you want to call it that, it's just simplifying it though. Do you want to do DLL calls for everything? Knock yourself out.
No.
Yeah.
I have used PowerShell.
Hey, we're over time. We gotta jump to the Hero meeting. But sorry,
okay, guys, we're gonna be talking later.
Thanks, everyone.